This is Dave Spence. Welcome to Advisory Power Moves, Retirement Planning and Representation. I'm Dave Spence, CPA, CFP, a couple other credentials, and I am the founder of Tax-Free Tutors. And I'm joined today by Valisha Dixon, an enrolled agent and certified tax counselor. I don't get those credentials right all the time.
Okay.
But we're going to talk today about a couple of different things. Futuristic tax planning. The whole idea is tax planning and doing more planning and less preparation or less tax compliance work. So we hope that you'll find this useful and you'll get some great ideas and maybe help you get on the next step toward doing more advisory and planning work. Felicia is an expert retirement or an expert tax professional with over 40 years of doing tax returns, but she is uniquely qualified to help us out today because she actually transitioned into planning and representation. And I understand you don't even do tax returns anymore, Felicia. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, thanks, Dave. And thanks for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity. So you're right. After 46 years, which was January 1st, was my 46th tax season. That was the last tax season that I will ever do.
Wow.
I transitioned out in June from full tax season to tax representation work. So you had talked about credentials. My CTRC is Certified Tax Representation Consultant. So basically, I'm the mediator between the taxpayer and the taxing agencies, whether it be state or government, the IRS. So I am seeing all these people with problems, and we're also seeing the people that, don't want to have problems, that are trying to find ways to create tomorrow without killing today.
Okay, nice. Now, how did you find yourself moving more and more into that direction? And was it an intentional move or?
So honestly, it was kind of one of those moves where you feel like the spirits or good Lord tapping at my shoulder going, Felicia, I think it's time. I've always done some piece of representation work, always. I have 2 degrees in accounting, 3 certifications in tax. And tax, I am a math major. I'm a numbers person. And so the tax always made sense to me. I mean, I actually got my enrolled agent's license so long ago. They didn't even have computers. Let's just say that. It was not computerized. I've just always loved the concept of helping people, any directive that I can help them. So if that means that I can help them create tomorrow in a better environment of today, that's the bonus, right? As we're talking today, we're talking about, retirement and planning for tomorrow. We are talking about planning for our future, whether it's mine or even my clients. And it's important that our clients know what they have available and how this is all going to affect them. Because as we all know, tomorrow's not promised, at least not as it is today. We're going to see tomorrow. We all hope that. But what does tomorrow look like? We don't know that. And I think, when you and I have had conversations in the past, I think you bring up some really valid points. So I'm going to lead it back over to you and let you explain to, the audience exactly what it is that you're offering up.
Good. Thank you. I've done financial planning for over 40 years. I've been a CFP for over 35, a CPA for over 40 years. And I started out doing tax work and audit work and accounting work and so forth. But that was a long time ago. And I left public accounting to pursue the CFP when I kind of fell in love with dealing with the future instead of the past and helping people to answer questions like, okay, well, we got it all right now. And, I can get my estimates right and everything, but how do I plan for a comfortable future? How do I plan for, my family, for college, for estate planning and all these things? And I just kind of love that. So I took my accounting knowledge and I jumped into the jungle, if you will, where I think 90% or more of the people out in the financial services jungle are not competent or not honest, not on the same page as I'd like to be with clients. So it was challenging, but very rewarding over time. I feel like I've helped a lot of people, first and foremost by not going down the path that so many people have suffered on, getting bad stuff, getting bad service, buying something, and then the person's gone. So it's been rewarding. And I think that this is a good time for tax professionals to be thinking about expanding and doing more tax representation, financial planning, estate planning, all of these things. The world is unlimited, but it's hard for everybody to take those first steps. Now, I think also that we're in a very, very dangerous place now, and planning is more important than ever.
I agree that I really do agree. I think if we don't plan now, and I see that a lot in the representation world, even beyond just having tax season, that individuals don't plan for tomorrow. And especially, the baby boomers are not the baby boomers, excuse me, the Gen X's and the Gen Z's. They're not thinking, no, they think they're going to live forever and they're not going to need any of this. And, the reality of it is that they don't understand. And if we don't educate them, then who does? I mean, because what I have found is that those that come to see me, their parents didn't educate them because they didn't know, and so it all, that generational education comes downward. And so what I like to do is I like to have my clients come to somebody like you and say, can you just give them the education they need? I try to tell them as much as I know. I don't niche in that area. So as the old adage goes, don't reinvent the wheel. And you've got the wheel already invented. So I like to hand it off and let somebody that really understands how they can make this beneficial for that person work.
Yeah. Let me share a couple of things here with the audience. The first one here is the debt clock. Look at this. It already just turned over to 38 trillion. We've heard the 37 trillion thrown around a lot. It's now over 38 trillion. When we were just talking the other day, getting ready for this, it was still at 37 and change, but look how fast it's moving. It's basically about $1 million every 40 seconds is being added to the debt. And we can't afford to do this. I mean, if $1 trillion is outrageous, I've told this a number of times. I'm not sure if everybody's heard it yet, but 1 million seconds is 11.5 days. 1 billion seconds is 31.5 years. And 1 trillion seconds is 317 centuries. So $38 trillion in debt and climbing very rapidly. It's like we don't care. We're not doing anything about it. And the problem is when we have to pay the interest on the debt, we print more money, but that money, 30% of it goes outside the United States to foreign countries and foreign investors and so forth. But that's real tax dollars that are coming out of our wallet. And
absolutely.
That number right there is almost $1 trillion this year, and it's actually larger than the defense budget. I'm not sure if everybody can see these, but these are the top 4 expenditures on our budget as a nation, and the 4 of them make up over 92 cents out of every dollar. And when you look at the interest on the debt being number 3, and then Social Security and Medicare being tied to 10 or 11,000 people a day signing up for that, all the baby boomers, it's like, where's it going? Is anybody paying attention? The train is running away and there's no conductor here. And it's all politics. It's fighting and pushing and shoving, and nobody wants to risk not being reelected by telling baby boomers we have to raise the rates and all that. So it's kind of a nightmare. And I want to.
Well, and I think they scare a lot of the baby boomers too, in the fact that they say, "Oh, well, Social Security is going to go away," and then what do we do? I mean, it's a catch-22. It really is.
Felicia, the last time that that our debt was this high, and it wasn't the 38 trillion, but it was over 100% of our gross domestic product. So that's kind of how they measure whether it's reasonable or not. Most economists feel that the debt ought to be 40 to 70% of our gross domestic product, how much we produce and exchange, annually. And it's not at 40 to 70%. It's at 125, 130%, depending on how you measure it. And like I said, growing. The last time it was that high was right after World War II. And in 1945, we raised the taxes a lot, and we kept them that way through 4 decades. From 45 to 85, the taxes were higher. Now, if I plug in this little calculator I make, if I put somebody in there making $250,000, this year they'll pay roughly $45,000, $46,000. They'll be in a 24% marginal bracket, 18% effective. But you look back in 1945, their marginal rate would have been 50, effective rate 33, and in today's dollars, they would have paid 83,000 instead of 45,000.
Isn't that crazy?
Same thing here, 67,000, 56, 77, 74. Those are in today's dollars. So you can see we really bit the bullet there for 40 years to bring the debt back under control. And this is something that we're probably going to have to do now. Back in 45, when the war ended, that's when the baby boomers started being born. So you didn't have this big Social Security and Medicare avalanche coming at you, and now we do. So we're not funding that. It's not even included in our debt. The fact that we have to pay all those benefits are not even reflected on our balance sheet as real liabilities. So the reality is probably more like over $100 trillion that we got to face. Now, so what I'm thinking as a planner and as an experienced, tax advisor, I'm saying that we ought to be looking down the road a little ways with our clients and say, look, we're probably in the lowest tax brackets we're going to see the rest of our lives. And if that's the case, what are we going to do? What should we be doing? And that's where we got to be thinking, taking control of our tax situation and paying taxes today and avoiding taxes tomorrow and in retirement. We've got to throw out the myth that you're going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement.
And that's been a big myth for a long time, Dave. I mean, that's always been the contention of putting money away for retirement. Is the concept is to put money in today, you retire at a lower bracket. So therefore the tax, you're not taxing it today, but when you tax it 20 years from now, hypothetically, when you decide to, it's going to be taxed at a lower rate. But as you're saying, that is more likely than not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you start thinking that way, I think now you're really going to be doing a good job for your clients. If you can get them to pay taxes at 24, 22%, even 32, you would have done better than all of these years. So you're taking money out of the future tax return and putting it onto the current tax return. And then, you might be saving, 50 cents on the dollar by doing that. And that could be so powerful over time. And the first thing that comes to mind is Roth accounts. So, people need to understand all the different ways that you can do a Roth. And a lot of people think there's no way they can do it, but they can. Roth conversions can be done by almost anyone. There's some catches as to where you're going to pay the taxes. If you withhold it and you're under 59.5, there's complication there. There's penalties. But beyond Roth, what are you going to do? Because it scares me a little bit, especially with affluent clients that have pretty much maxed out what they can put into retirement plans and things like that. And if they could save more money and it could be sheltered from taxes, they would do it in a heartbeat. With those people, I say, okay, let's do as much as we can with Roth, but then let's complement it with something like a LIRP. That's where the life insurance retirement plan comes in. And a lot of people get turned off by life insurance, and there's good reason for that. I wrote a book, which I'm going to be giving away to anybody that attends today. It's the Tax Pro's Guide. Let's see if I can get this to shine right. Tax Pro's Guide to, it doesn't want to work there. Tax Pro's Guide to using LIRPs as an advanced tax strategy. So what I want people to understand is life insurance can be a great investment tool, and it can provide the same sheltering as a Roth, but without the limits and the age requirements and RMDs and all kinds of different things that come with it. But there's a reason most LIRPs will fail, and probably 90% of them will. But if you can get into the 10% that succeed, then you've got now Roth accounts and LIRP accounts, and a LIRP can do just as well as a Roth if it's managed properly. And now you've got diversification. If the IRS has to say, okay, we meant well back in the day, but we're going to have to start taxing some of that Roth money. I mean, we're just in a pickle, right? And if they start doing that, you know, then you're going to have your diversification. They're probably not going to go after life insurance. There's already almost $3 trillion in Roths, and there's a few hundred million maybe in life insurance. It's peanuts.
So Dave, you keep throwing around the word Roths, and and you threw out the LIRP concept, and so making sure that everybody understands exactly that the LIRP is kind of conceptually like a Roth with big differences, and those big differences are, and I'm just going to start with contribution limitations. But they also need to understand that it is in concept like a Roth. It is not going to give them the tax deduction today, unlike a traditional IRA would do.
Right.
But it's not limited to the amount that they can put in, unlike a regular Roth IRA would also be. So we know the limitations are what, 7,500. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I think that's pretty close. Right. And then you have it's indexed for being over 50. It's so. Those are things that I think are important, especially in the planning concept, because most people will go, well, I can put my money into a Roth IRA. Well, you can very easily. But why don't we think about something different that you could technically put more into without being penalized for putting more into that, and have it treated the same as a Roth?
Yeah, great question. And part of the reason is that, just like the myth about being in a lower tax bracket in retirement, there's a myth that you can't make good money on a life insurance policy. You've got too much money goes to the insurance company. And there's people out there shooting it down all the time. You might start a LIRP and find that, the tax professional says that's probably a mistake. You might be better putting your money somewhere else. Or the investment advisor who doesn't sell life insurance or doesn't understand it and never thinks about the future of taxation, that's way beyond their capability. So they're going to be saying, well, I can make you more money by managing that. So let me give you a little example here. It's very simple, even though it looks kind of complicated here with all these numbers. But if we took somebody that had $50,000 a year of after-tax money, okay, we're not looking for a tax write-off on this money, but we're going to get it all back tax-free. So on this side of the page, I'm going to show doing like a Roth conversion, or just using after-tax income to fund a LIRP or fund a Roth at $50,000. Now, you can't do this unless it's a conversion, because that's over your limits. But if you could put $50,000 into a Roth, how would that stack up with a life insurance policy that has all those insurance charges and commissions and everything in it? Well, up here, if we let them both grow at just 6%, and it's $50,000 going into both of them for 10 years, and it's a 55-year-old male, what's going to happen? Over here, if they both earn 6%, and you've got a management fee of 1% and expenses of 0.5%, which is very typical, you're paying an advisor to manage this money, then you could take out almost $48,000 a year from age 65 to almost 85, don't quite make it, and you'd run out of money. So you put 500 in, you got 920 out. Over here with the LIRP, you're going to buy a death benefit, and we're going to buy the smallest death benefit we can on a $50,000 contribution. The smallest amount that we could buy and still get the tax advantages is an $829,000 policy. So we put the money in there, and it gets eaten up a little bit in the beginning. This year-end cash value is after a surrender charge, so it's probably more like $43,000 at the end of the first year. And I'll explain that in a minute. But you've also got a death benefit that's going up equal the original one plus your cash. And you
So-
start, go ahead.
Oh, so sorry. I was just going to ask on the death benefit on the life insurance side of that is the life insurance policy kind of like a whole life insurance policy versus a term life insurance policy? Is that
Yes.
my understanding? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. For that amount of insurance, you could probably buy that for $2,000 or something, a 55-year-old. So we're putting in, we're paying the charges of an insurance policy, but we're putting the extra money in as much as we can for whatever face amount, blah, blah, blah. You know, if we have a budget of 50,000, we want to put in as much of that 50,000 into the cash value as we can. And then we're going to take it back out later as loans. And the loans just reduce the death benefit and the cash value, but those loans come out tax-free. And if we did that with the same amount of money, the 47,850, not only does it last 20 years of pulling it out, but you still got a $350,000 death benefit and $250,000 in cash. Whereas the Roth has completely lapsed. And if you go to the next year, you can even do that for another 5 years.
That's amazing. You know, and those are things that we don't see on the market as a norm every day. That's a great planning tool, whether it be for those that need that additional investment for tomorrow, or even in my world where the resolution client comes in and we get them fixed and we get them in compliance, and now we need to make sure that moving forward that they're ready for tomorrow, and this is a great planning tool no matter what area of accounting or tax or representation that you happen to be practicing in.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a $50,000 premium. I'm showing it because the affluent usually do put big chunks in there because they can. But you can.
It's also it could also be for somebody who is kind of in the middle of the bracket concept of they don't have 50,000, maybe they only have 10, and even at the $10,000 bracket that they could put in, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can also spread, like say, no, I have to give you $10,000 all at once. I can give you $10,000 over the course of the year.
Right, that's true. Now this is using an indexed universal life policy, and that's the most popular one for LIRPs. You can use whole life, you can use variable life, you can use these IULs. The IUL is grown in popularity because you're putting the money into the policy and you can use the cash value to invest in indexes like the S&P 500, but now there's a lot more than that. So if you invest in the S&P 500, what they do is they take a little chunk of your contribution and they buy options so that if the market goes up, they can create the same return as the market up to a limit. Usually there's a 12%, 13, 14% limit on the S&P 500. But what happens is if the market goes down, you lose nothing, because they took a little bit of money. The rest of the money was invested in fixed investments that are going to bring you back to whole. So your cash value never goes south because of investments, but it can go up better than a 4 or 3 or 5% whole life contract because you're using the indexes.
So something that comes to mind just as you were talking, and as I'm looking at these numbers and how we can take money out. The thing that we didn't discuss, and the thing that I didn't hear you say, was it has to be an RMD, a reasonable, mandated distribution. And so, unlike Roths and retirement accounts, traditional retirement accounts, there are RMDs. We know that those are, required minimums that have to be made when you reach that age. And I'm not even going to go with the age. I'm just going to say when you reach that certain age, that you have to do this. And if I'm understanding you correctly, that doesn't happen here.
Right. It doesn't happen on a life insurance policy. There's no requirement to distribute the money. If you don't distribute it, this death benefit just keeps growing and growing.
And you don't have to and you take out what you need, right? So in the concept of, once we start taking a loan out, if we don't need but 30,000, then we can leave the rest of it in there. And correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't you can also utilize this if you were to find yourself that you need, okay, I need long-term care.
Long-term care. Yeah, absolutely. There's two big advantages that I want to share still. And one of them is just that, the long-term care. You get out here at age 75, you've got let's call it age 73, there's a $526,000 death benefit. So at $500,000 death benefit, if you need long-term care, this particular policy, not all of them will do this. So you got to make sure you're working with somebody that knows the landscape out there. This policy will pay you up to 24% of that $500,000, or let's say $120,000 a year, up to that amount every year as needed for whatever you want it for. And this is a type of benefit that you just have to qualify for long-term care. You don't necessarily have to spend it on long-term care. You don't have to be reimbursed. You don't have to put bills in or anything. If you just get a doctor to say that you need long-term care, then up to 120,000 comes out. And that's all tax-free because it's a prepayment of the death benefit. Over here, you've got 400,000. If you need to take out 120, you can, but it's going to deplete it pretty fast. And there's nothing left at the end. In here, they'll give you the 24% just so they keep enough in there to keep the policy in force and it never lapses on you. That's what makes all of this tax-free. If you took out $957,000 on $500,000 of basis or premiums paid, and then you cashed it out for $250, well, you got to add the $250 and the $950 and compare that to your basis and pay taxes on the gain. So you don't want it to lapse, but this can all be managed, and then you can take the money out tax-free, and you've got some tax diversification, and you got the long-term care benefit.
So just to make sure, and just to recap on that, just that little piece is, one, we can take this out if for some reason, you do have to go into long-term care, even if it's just on a temporary basis. It doesn't have to mean it's a permanent thing. You can pull money out for that. And you mentioned the word basis, and I know a lot of people think, oh, well, we've got basis, so they're going to sell inside the instrument. Now we're going to have to pay capital gains, and that's not correct here, because there is no tax on this money. Just like a Roth IRA, when you pull the money out, it's tax deferred. So my question becomes, in that concept, is there a time limitation that you must hold this fund before it becomes non-taxable?
No, there's
unlike a Roth, because the Roth says you have to have it for 5 years. And if you pull it out before that 5 years, then the earnings is taxed.
Right.
And in this case, we're saying absolutely not. There's no time limitation. It's from day one.
Right. I've programmed these things, or I've designed them, if you will, for 45-year-olds that, have millions of dollars. They've sold the business or whatever, and they want to get that money tax sheltered. They'll load one of these things up over 5 years or 10 years. And, you might put $200,000 a year for 5 years. That's $1 million you can move from taxable into forever tax-free. And there's a great long-term care benefit. There's a big death benefit. There's liquidity. There's no age 59 and a half or 55 or 72. None of that matters. So they can take money out from 55 to 60 before they tap their other stuff and avoid penalties. So there's a ton of flexibility.
It's a great planning piece for anybody and any age. So when we've talked a lot about the age 55 kind of concept of starting. What if somebody comes in, let's just do the hypothetical, they're 60 and they really don't have a retirement plan, or maybe they have a very small little 401k. If they're willing to convert it, pay the tax now, is this as beneficial to them? Let's say they have 100,000 to put into that. Is this as beneficial to them as it would be as if they had started at age 55? I realize they're not going to have as much money in there, but
No, there's a lot of advantages for people in their 60s and even 70 years old, because if you step back and think about what you're trying to accomplish, you're trying to avoid income taxes, and you might be trying to avoid income taxes for your heirs. You know, if you're 70, I've had people in their 70s and they say, look, if I can get one of these on my life, if I'm healthy enough to qualify, I'll just do that. And then they inherit the death benefit tax free, right? And if I
Sure.
use and if I use my IRA to fund it, I'm taking money out of my IRA at 22% because I don't have any other income anymore. So I can take it out at 22 and 24, and they might be avoiding a tax on my IRA 10 years from now that could be 30 or 40 or 50, right? Yeah.
So hypothetically,
Well,
would you say that it would be advantageous for somebody, that's at that retirement age or beyond, to look at their traditional IRAs and say, hey, maybe I should, because right now, as we noticed, as we talked a minute ago, the bracket's kind of low. And if, let's just say this year, they took that money this year and took it out and put it in something to this type of instrument, would it, I mean, be beneficial to them in the long haul? Because we want to make sure that, we know that they're going to have to sell whatever's inside that retirement, and that, so they're going to lose a little there, and then they have to make sure they keep out enough to pay the tax, so they're going to lose a little there, and so that, they may not have as much as they'd like to put into it, but does every benefit of that still apply moving forward?
right.
Do you see where I'm going with this conversation,
Yeah.
with this
Yeah.
question?
Yeah. That's what we're supposed to be doing as planners. You got to weigh the pros and the cons. So yeah, it can make sense. And I'm the first one to say it doesn't make sense when it doesn't, right? It may be something that you can't put on the dad, but maybe mom. You can put a policy on mom if you got a married couple. You can buy policies on your children and load it up for them, and then this is a retirement plan for them that they can access tax free and gets grandfathered and all of that stuff. So you're kind of limited only by your own imagination. But let me talk about two of the things that go wrong with these policies. And one, I started to talk about it. This $50,000, again, it could be 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, anything you want, but you want to stick to a plan. You want to set a budget that says, yeah, I can afford to do $50,000 a year for at least 5 years, and maybe even 10. Let's do this. But if you stop funding it, and a lot of people may, you put $50,000 into the LIRP right here, and the next year your investment advisor says, this is really crazy. Let's stop the bleeding. Let's take your $7,800. Let's get rid of this policy, buy some term insurance, blah, blah, blah. Or the tax advisor doesn't support the idea. So, when it falls apart, the two people that you should be trusting to be even telling you about this in the first place might be the people that are pulling the rug out on it. So the main thing is you got to make sure you're going to have that money. And I like to see it coming from both income and assets. A lot of people inherit money or they save money in a taxable account. They've got $1 million at Merrill Lynch or something, and they get 1099s every year. What if you could move that money over here and get a solid 5 to 8% return average per year, not lose money in a bad market, and have total access to it, no restrictions and everything? You're basically moving money from future taxation to future tax free, and it will make sense. If you look at the cash value on these two, after 10 years, this Roth IRA has more cash because of the insurance charges. It's got 638. Over here, you've got $558,000. But look at it in 10 years. Down 10 years, even after taking this money out, you've got 403 on this side, 372 over here, and your investment advisor is probably still charging you 1% on that. Over here, your charges are pretty much all gone because they have to be paid early on. And that's another thing to understand. It's like paying a cover charge to get into a country club or a good restaurant or something. You pay the expenses, but they have to be upfront because the insurance company's taking $50,000 and promising $800,000 if you die. they're regulated. They have to get their cash reserves to match up with those liabilities as quickly as possible. So they're taking this money in and they're going to charge, they can call it whatever they want, admin fees, premium loads, blah, blah, blah. They're going to get enough money to build this cash reserve up to where it needs to be. And then they don't have to charge as much anymore. They can charge a fraction of that. And over the life of this contract, it's probably going to average 1.5%, even including the life insurance charges. That's
This is
pretty
just amazing.
because this side's going to charge you 1.5, but the commission is going to be all pretty much front loaded for this agent. If I sold this thing for $50,000, there might be a $20,000 commission, which is great. The second year when they put the 50,000 in, I might get 2% or like $1,000. So I'm going to be out there selling the next one, right? If I'm just an insurance guy, and then they make a lot of money just selling the new victim, the new client,
The latest and greatest person that wants to believe in what they have to sell.
Yeah, and they don't want to service it. So I think smart tax professionals that understand this are going to say, yeah, you need to do that. You need to stay with it. You need to get that agent back in there and talk about the index, how it's doing. What are the other options? You know, what can I do? Should I increase this thing or decrease it? So make them do their work because they're not incentivized by the insurance company. The insurance company doesn't want to pay that $20,000 out. That's money out the door. They have to do it to incentivize those people to minimize their risk. They need large pools of healthy people that are going to cover the deaths of those that die, you know, sooner than expected.
You mentioned something a little while ago about the fact that, you know, they may only put the 50,000 in, and the next year, you know, their broker may talk them out of doing this, and that happens a lot. I'm sure you see that a lot. And, you know, the advisor on the other side, you know, not the financial advisor, because that's the one that's talking to them saying, no, you need to take this out. But those of us, you know, the tax professional, the representation, the financial advisor, in the concept of, you know, where we sit, you know, I think a lot of us are a little scared in that concept, because here's what I have noticed that has happened in the past is that if the client loses the money, which they're going to pull that out the next year because the advisor tells them to. So now they've just kind of lost a little bit, right? And now they're going to be mad because they've lost money when they should have just left it alone. And then they're mad at us. And do you know that every person that loses money in the market, do you know who they fire first?
Yeah.
The tax professional, the accountant, you know, the planner on the other side of that, because I don't know why they don't fire their broker, because he's the one that convinced them to do it, but they'll fire us first because we made the recommendations. But what we made the recommendations was they should have stayed, not moved out. And if they moved out, then they're still mad at us, because, and it's a two-sided sword, if you'd like to say, you know, a double-sided edge.
Catch-22, huh?
It is a catch-22, because I have seen it. I have realistically seen it. And I think that's a big thing for those of us that are doing any type of planning out here, is that we kind of have to be very careful, but yet be very, you know, I tell my clients, I sometimes can be very stern and say, you really need to do this. You know, I can't push anybody into doing something, but we can recommend. And if we recommend it strongly enough to at least allow them to come in and have a conversation with you,
right?
That I think is huge. If we can get them on your calendar and get them not so much saying in the door, but at least just in a meeting, they say, just listen to what they have to say. It's not like going out to the local restaurant and everybody comes in and listens to the spiel of whatever somebody has to say. No, this is strictly driven for you. It has nothing to do with the rest of the world, because it's individualized per person.
Yeah, and it is individualized, and you got to be able to understand how to design something like this, but you really have to take a leap into the future and say, okay, if we're going to do this, and you say you can do, you know, $30,000 this year, how many years can we count on that to happen? I want to see at least 5, It can work fine after a 5-year contribution thing, but the longer you let it work and percolate, the better it's going to serve you in the long run.
I had some clients that actually did some Roth conversions back when, there was no penalties for doing their, or they did the IRA to Roth. And I'm thinking, those are the type people that if we could get them in the door and say, hey, taking your Roth from where it's at to here would be a huge benefit in the end, because two things happen there. Number one, they're not going to get taxed on it because it's already in a Roth. But number two, they're going to gain all the additional benefits that they're not getting with the Roth. And they don't have to do RMDs.
Yeah, I don't know that I would like to fund it with Roth money. And here's why. I think you need diversification. So that's good. Like if they do tax Roths down the road, but that's going to be an unknown. But if they do, you're better off on your LIRP money, right? But also most Roth money is going to be invested in equities, okay? And you're gonna be shooting for that 10 or 12% that the market's going to give us. With the LIRP, I like to use bond money. I like to use, so if you got a 60-40 mix and 40% of it's bonds, you can buy treasuries and corporates and things like that, but you can lose money. When interest rates go up, those bond values go down. Within a LIRP, you're going to have protection on the downside. So you're going to cap your losses at 0. And you're going to outperform the rates that you're going to get there because you're using the equity index.
Oh, it's very interesting. I'm glad you cleared that up, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that would have thought that.
Yeah, I would use IRA money in a heartbeat. Now, I would say if you look at somebody and they've got $100,000 before they get to the next tax bracket, well, let's think about that $100,000. Can we use 20,000 of it a year and fund a LIRP for 5 years? Can we use other assets to fund the LIRP? You got some investment account over here. You got an inherited IRA that you're going to have to deplete in 10 years. Let's see where the money is now and what your cash flow is. That's pretty strong and certain. And then let's set a budget, and it might be 20,000 instead of 30. But you work all that stuff through, and then you get them in a much better position before the tax rates go up like crazy.
That's very interesting. What if the tax rates don't go up?
Yeah. Well, in that case, I think we go bankrupt as a country, first of all. But
I think you're right.
But I've got one thing here I'd like to share on that. And I kind of thought this through, and I thought, geez, even if tax rates don't go up, and they're in the same now as in the future, then look at these 4 triggers right here, or tripwires, I call them, that could throw you into a higher tax bracket. Your regular IRA distributions, even RMD, could be larger than needed, pushing you up into a tax bracket. How many of our clients are taking RMDs and just RMDs because they don't need it? They don't want to pay taxes on it. And
well, in today's world, there's so many people that are of age of taking the RMDs that are still working. As you said, they don't need the money, but they have to take it. It's mandatory, not optional.
Right. And if you take it out of the LIRP, it's not taxable, so you don't care about it, but there is no RMD requirement. So you take whatever you want, and you can have a couple $100,000 of income if you fund this thing heavily enough, and along with your Roth and everything, you can be taking tax-free income. But if you've got these tax-deferred assets, and there's billions of them out there, trillions, that people have accumulated in these things. And if their investment is good, if their returns are great, then that RMD is going to be even bigger, right? And you don't control the tax rate when you're taking it out. You control the tax rate today. And if you're funding today, if you're saving today, and you have the access to the funds, then you're smarter controlling when you'll pay the taxes. You say, okay, I'll pay my taxes at 24%, thank you. And then later on, you're taking out $100 grand and not paying taxes on it at all. So that's one tripwire, is that the RMD, the investment may do better than you expected, which turns out to be a problem tax-wise. Your Medicare premiums, we all know that they can be higher because your RMDs push you up into another income level for the IRMAA taxes. And if you're married, one spouse dies, your tax rate's basically double right there if it's all coming out of investments and IRAs and so forth. And then finally, your untaxed IRA balances, the tax deferred accounts that pass to your kids, might pass in their highest earning years, and they've got 10 years, they've got to pull it out and pay 35% taxes maybe today, and who knows, 45% or 55% if we go back to the tax rates of the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Well, and unfortunately, with number 4, when they are inherited, it's at what point in the child's life are they inheriting this? Because unfortunately, as we all know, again, we talked about in the beginning, we're not promised tomorrow, but we're trying to create tomorrow. And we all hope that tomorrow comes and goes, right? The good Lord's the only one that has that knowledge. But we, and I think of my own parents, and when they passed, because when they passed, some of the children received it at a very young age, and you're saying, okay, well, we have 10 years to get that out. So if they're getting it at 22, 23, maybe let's say 30, now 10 years from now they're 40. Well, in that 10, their income bracket go? How high? It's going to hopefully just continue to rise, hopefully over the next 10 years. So now they're at the 10-year bracket, and now they have to pull this money out too. So now what happens in that 10th year? They are just, the tax ramifications can be just is the way I'm seeing it. I see this climb, so I really see that as a disadvantage to the inherited individuals. Even though they don't see it that way, it really is a disadvantage to them.
It is, absolutely. I look at it as, we're married to the IRS, and they get to decide how much of our money they want. And,
I agree.
And Congress, they can.
As I said in my book, stand strong against the IRS. And the whole concept is to be due diligence and make sure that you're making every effort you can to pay as little as in our golden years, because that's what those years are called, right? There are golden years. It's supposed to be the years that we enjoy the best because we worked hard to get to that point. It's not supposed to say, oh, well, you've retired now, you're going to die. No, it's you retire, do whatever it is you enjoy doing in that moment.
Right. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the Q&A or the chat, and our friends here, Gaynor and Sarah, who are helping us run this thing, will get them to us. But yeah, I think we got to step back and say, look, we're in a real pickle here as a nation, debt-wise, and with the baby boomers retiring, with political gridlock and everything else, we've got a little time. We probably got 5 to 10 years before the rates go back to where they were in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. But, now's the time to do the planning. And then you think a little bit beyond that, you say, okay, life insurance, it's always given me a bad taste in my mouth. But if we know what's wrong, we know what the risks are, we know where the failure points are, we can get past that. And if we do that, now it can work as good or better than a Roth. You got the long-term care benefits, you got a death benefit, you got no age rules and all that stuff, no contribution limits. So it's really powerful, but it tends to fall apart because it's not nurtured properly. And then you got diversification too. You've got a couple of different pots of money. The LIRP can give you downside protection in a bad market. The Roth maybe not, unless you're in annuities over there. So you got complementary things going on here, and I think as advisors we could take advantage of that.
I think this has been very interesting. It's been something learning curve for me, because it's not an instrument that when you walk into your broker's office and say, hey, I want to create a retirement account of whether you have one already or whether you want to create a new one. And they don't talk about this.
Right.
They honestly don't. I have a broker, and I can say that I spoke to him last month and said, oh, by the way, and now I've known this gentleman for years, and he's a good friend as well, but it's not one that we never came up in conversation. So it's interesting that this is now something that we're throwing out there into the world and saying, hey, you guys talk about this. I think you got to come see Dave. Dave has this down to an art, and he really knows what he's doing. Because a regular standard broker does not talk. They all talk about the traditional things, traditional IRAs,
And they
401
don't,
simples
and they
and
won't talk
Roths.
about taxes. They won't talk about the future
Oh,
of
no,
taxes. And they don't know enough from,
absolutely not.
I
Never,
mean,
never talks to me.
you and I,
He'll say that he talks to
you,
me.
you and I were filing tax returns for clients, in the 80s. Most of the people on this call probably weren't, but we actually did it when the tax rates were that high.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I actually filed my first tax return back in 1977. So
yep, I was about 79, 77. Yeah. Um, Sarah, maybe we can put the link up there. I'd like to allow everyone to have a free copy of my book. If you want a hard copy, you can buy it on Amazon. If you want an ebook version, we're going to put a link in the chat. Yep, already did, she says. So it's already there on the LinkedIn side. I'm on the Zoom side, I guess. But yeah, please check out the book. I think, I had endorsements from Jackie Meyer and from Ed Slott and David M. Walker, former Controller General of the United States. They've all endorsed my book. I think you'll find it a good read, an easy thing to understand, and it'll put you miles ahead of the typical financial planner, or not financial planner necessarily, but financial services rep, insurance rep out there that doesn't get this level of sophistication. And this
absolutely.
work really can
It's
work
been
really
good.
well.
It's been very educational from both sides of the fence side for me, as well as the tax side, excuse me, and doing any type of planning. So those that are in the audience that do any type of tax work, I was always taught that once we got into this, you got a key to the workshop. Now, what do you do with it? And part of what we do with that in that workshop is think as we do and think while doing, so that we're thinking, we're doing the work, but we're being forward thinking about, okay, oh, I see this. Now where do we go from here? How can I help this client? I got into representation work to begin with because I enjoy the satisfaction of helping the client get where they need to be. And that comes with planning no differently, in the concepts of we're here now, how do we keep you here? What is the best avenue we can get you into so that you have for tomorrow, there, and we're thinking forward thinking and not today.
Felicia, I was wondering as you're speaking, you don't do the tax work, and most of the people on our call probably do the tax work, and they're upset with the IRS and the cutbacks and the staffing and now the government shutdown. How does that affect you on the representation side? Are you going through the same misery that they are?
I am. And so, I do representation work, but I do the compliance work. I do this, which is, filing all the prior year returns, because generally what I'm doing is I'm doing not just a current year return, but I'm doing 6 years worth as
Right.
6 years back. And so, yes, right now we have that same problem where picking up the phone and getting somebody to talk to you on the little limited. Revenue agents that are in the field that we have been working with on audit, or maybe offer comp, because the COIC built centers are closed. Those all do play into this. I have one going on right now where, we're like, we need extension a little bit, and we can't get a hold of the person because they're furloughed, and it is what it is. And I wish that our government could come to an agreement and get this opened back up, because just affects the Internal Revenue Service, and it doesn't. It affects every federal employee out there. And I say that wholeheartedly because I do have a daughter, law enforcement officer, and she has to go to work every day regardless.
Right. And no pay. Yeah.
That's it. She goes to work with no pay. And we say that because I did do a call this week on Monday, or not Monday. Yeah, today's Tuesday. I did a call yesterday. It was unfortunate that the individual that I talked to on the phone, you could just hear the little bit of disgruntledness in their voice, because they are working but they don't want to be. So I mean, I got fortunate that I got a hold of somebody, but you could just kind of tell there was that little bit of resentment. And I hate that. I hate it for them and I hate it for us because it makes it harder for us to get our jobs done and, you know, and do them effectively.
I live right outside of DC, like 20 miles from the White House. And it's, you know, everybody, you know, you go out to the store and the movie theater, it's like everybody around here is affected a lot.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's so sad. But, you know, it's happened a number of times in the past. They'll all get their back pay for the most part. I think most of them, if not all of them, will. And Congress is still getting their pay as we speak. So it's all taxpayer money, but taxpayer inconvenience. And we all get to suffer that. And you know, they'll make amends later on with the pay and stuff, and we get to pay the taxes on that.
Yeah, and you know, that's the piece I never did understand, and I don't want to talk politics here because that's not what we're here for, but that is a piece that I don't understand. They're going to back pay them. Why don't they just pay them while they're off?
Yeah, right.
Just
right.
You know, you're going to pay them anyway, so just pay them. Just do it now and just get it over with and be done with it. Because now they're going to get these big back checks and they're going to take huge dollars out in taxes. And it's, you know, it's just going to make them mad because it wouldn't have been that way if they did just paid them in the beginning.
Exactly. Hey, if you're on this call and we're not connected on LinkedIn, please do connect with Felicia and myself on
Absolutely.
LinkedIn, and go to Tax Free Tutors for more information about what I can do to help. I do implement LIRPs. I design them. I have people all around the country that I trust that can do a good job with them as well. So I'll definitely help you out. Give me a call, schedule a time. Look for Felicia's book coming out. When's that going to be coming out, Felicia?
My current book, I do have one out right now. I have one out called Stand Strong Against the IRS. That one is currently out and on Amazon. And then we have another one. I co-authored another one with a colleague, and it comes out. We hope. I'm thinking it'll be out by Thanksgiving. And it's called Drop the P. How to go from a tax prep practice to a tax rep practice. And so I have a t-shirt and I love it. And it wasn't, I didn't design it. It was designed by Eric Green, attorney out of Connecticut, that says life is too short to work another tax season. So, and I'm living by that motto.
I love that. I love that. Well, I don't see any other questions right now. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Felicia. And we hope to hear from you, and good luck on your transition to doing more and more tax planning.
Thank you. You as well. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.